Welcome back to Persephone Says. We are going to talk about what the hell is going on with the wedding industry because things are changing, things are shifting, and this is not a fear-mongering episode, but more about really assessing the situation from a couple's perspective and then how it's impacting the wedding industry. There's lots of narratives out there going on, and I think we just need to really think through Gen Z, how they're moving, just different environmental factors that are absolutely playing into what's going on here. So weddings are down 4% from 7% year over year in America alone. Now, again, we'll unravel why that is, but I think we can all agree that life has just gotten way more expensive than ever. We won't even talk about tariffs on this episode, but that is definitely playing into why people just can't afford to get married. And the cost of living has increased, right? We all know this. We need to really think and assess how Gen Z moves. And what we are seeing is that a lot of Gen Z and young people in general are starting businesses much younger than ever. They're not waiting to graduate college. Some of them are not even going to college. You can become a creator, an influencer, start an online e-commerce business, drop shipping business, work for Uber. There's so many ways where you can be your own business owner, your own boss, and have more autonomy over your life. And we're seeing that the majority of creators and influencers are female. And that is absolutely playing a huge role, I believe, in how this is now impacting the wedding industry, because that, biological clock that is ticking, we can kind of calm their nerves in a lot of ways because the societal pressures of having babies, the whole dynamic has changed a bit, right? So people are freezing their eggs. They are comfortable and confident in their decision to prioritize their careers. And I'm talking specifically women are comfortable prioritizing their careers over having babies or getting married at the ages that their parents might have gotten married or had babies. We're seeing lots of women even go to sperm banks unapologetically, like for sure, and having babies on their own without a man. And I'm fully I ship that and fully applaud it. I think, most recently, if you watch Summer House, Paige DeSorbo, who is a big icon to this generation, she's in her mid-30s and just at that point where she would have thought that she was going to get engaged or just thought that the next steps of life that have been prescribed by society were going to transpire. She's on a career high. And I feel like she is emblematic of what this generation is and what they're looking for. She broke off her relationship. She is more popular than ever, bigger brand deals than ever, tours. She's just on Love Island for all of those who are into pop culture. She has a best-selling book. All of the doors started to just be pushed open. And as the season of Summer House unraveled, it was clear that her boyfriend was really not supportive of basically her outshining him. And I think that this is actually a systemic issue that Gen Z is just fuck that. We're not doing that anymore. I think obviously female empowerment is on the rise. And so again, we're seeing women take more control of their lives. And that is, of course, going to have a direct impact on people getting married or waiting to get married, right? I do also feel, and we're seeing that Gen Z loves to break rules and really isn't into formalities. So formality is dying in all senses of the word. Tradition is also dying in a lot of ways. And we're seeing that both in practices within weddings, but also just in cultural shifts. Again, just with power dynamics shifting and who is the breadwinner. And, again, lots of pop culture references on this episode. You're seeing Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, all of these women who were stay-at-home mothers now becoming the breadwinners, and the dads are are taking care of the children. Like all of these things are throwing the traditional rules and, roles to the wayside. And so, yes, people will continue to get married. I don't think that is ever going to go away, but I do believe that the priorities have changed because women have more control over their voice, their life, and honestly, their finances and their career development and their paths. Now, I will also say this generation is so clear. And this is where I think the wedding industry is not listening whatsoever. They value authenticity and they value transparency. And there are a lot of people not being transparent. And let me just be so clear that obviously what we do on social media is we are selling a dream and we are selling a vision. But if you're not showing your personality and you're showing this picture, like everything is picture perfect and polished, and you're not showing any layers of yourself, it's going to be very hard for Gen Z to connect with you, period. There's going to be a sense of mistrust and just complete disconnect. A lot of people are not being transparent on what things cost. And by a lot of people, I'm talking about wedding professionals. Now, we're all guilty of seeing, and honestly, I'm part of the problem. My team is the one who is sharing all of the beautiful videos and photos from weddings that have transpired. The difference is that it's up to the wedding professionals, the planner, the florist, the wedding creative team to be honest on if you have the budget to support the vision that you are looking to achieve. And that very few people in this industry are very clear, like crystal clear about what things cost, period. And so they get frustrated. And I think that's why you're seeing even more ghosting than ever happen, because it's like people just feel like they're getting got because they kind of are, right? Like we don't like feeling got or feeling like we're stuck in a slippery situation. It's never comfortable. So be transparent. And if this budget can't support this vision, then be honest about that. Not every, what is that saying? Like there's a lid for every pot. Like not every client is meant to be yours. So the right ones will find you, obviously, if you position yourself as such. But if that budget doesn't support that vision, like you have to be honest and keep going back to the budget, because I think we just need to adjust people's expectations and be so clear. And yeah, it's going to offend some couples because they have no idea. This is the first time for most people making purchasing decisions this large, and for an emotionally charged event and for a wedding. All those things are firsts for most people. So please do yourself the favor, because it will come and bite you in the ass later in a myriad of different ways. Okay. Now, one thing that we're also seeing is the power of influence. So piggybacking off of that level of transparency, I feel like the wedding industry needs a serious PR campaign right now. There's some big influencers and thought leaders who have kind of dumped all over the wedding industry in ways that, like, oh my gosh, like I clutched my pearls. I was like, oh shit, this is really true and embarrassing. And you have Alex Cooper, who did podcast after podcast talking about like how pissed off she was. I was like, and not tagging her wedding team. And like, that is no shade to that team. It's just like what happened there that made her feel that way. To me, it was probably a communication disconnect. 95% of the time, that's what's happening. You have Nick Viall and Natalie Joy going on their podcast. These are two of the biggest podcasts in the world, two of the biggest influencer groupings in the world, talking about their wedding with very public weddings and how the planning process was miserable, and they paid a boatload for their weddings. Not good, fam. Not good. We've got to like change that around. We've got to realign people's expectations and what looks like a $4 million wedding, because it was a $4 million wedding, isn't possible with $40,000. It's just math, right? So what is possible? Like, how can you get certain elements? There's just like a communication disconnect there. Okay. And so that's not doing us any favors on people wanting to actually spend and exhaust their money in this capacity. Lastly, from a dating perspective and even just an engagement perspective, I was reading some recent studies that said that men's lives improve when they get married. Their health improves. Basically, everything in their life improves. And a woman's life gets considerably worse, which I'm like, I don't believe that to be true. I just want to be perfectly clear. If you have like a good dynamic with your spouse or your husband, it doesn't need to be like that. But the woman ends up fronting a lot of the load and basically taking on a second job by, making sure that she is the caretaker or the primary caretaker for the kids, or now she's responsible for the upkeep of the house, in addition to all the other things that she has to do. And I found that that was such a relevant piece of information, because Gen Z is taking this in. They're like, fuck, like, I'm happy. I'm happy dating this person or not dating whatsoever, because I'm working on myself and my mental health, and I'm fine just being me. And if it happens, it happens. Like, that is a lot of the perspective here. And the last thing I will say from a couple side of things is, I do think that America has just kind of caught up to the way that Europe has always functioned. So a lot of Europeans don't get married. They cohabitate. They have babies out of wedlock. It's not a big deal. They break up, get back together, and never get married. And like, this has always been. I'm not saying that that's what I want for my industry, this industry, because my heart and soul is here. But I am saying that it's not abnormal. And that means we need to be a lot sharper, a lot more creative, and also meet this generation where they are. And that means we're going to have to adjust. So we're going to need to teach old dogs new tricks. Even if you're not an old dog, you got to pay attention to these things, because if your business is struggling and you're not getting the leads that you have typically received in the past, or there is like, you are sounding the alarms in your house, you need to be paying attention to this, because ultimately I want to share what you can do. Now, in this space, for whatever reason, and I have shared this before, we haven't been trying that hard to get business. Like, let's be honest, we haven't been trying that hard to get business. We have operated like, people will find us. Maybe you did like a wedding wire listing or not listing. Maybe you did like a couple little things, but you haven't built your business to be sustainable. And I saw something floating around TikTok the other day that said, for the first time, these very high ticket, wedding planners and designers who are commanding this amount of money are kind of being outed for being a fucking mess inside. Meaning like, they are charging this because externally it looks a certain way, but internally they are not operating at a luxury level. Let's let that marinate for a second. Their systems and processes are not in existence. There's certainly no sales funnels. Like, forget about it. Their follow-up game, their communication game, like, you guys, like, at some point, we have to evolve and we have to focus and honestly behave just like every other business has needed to operate. Again, I really am a big believer of the fact that like, we've been winging it for a long time. And it's like, that person will find me, I post on Instagram a couple times. Like, what? Like, what? If you want to be seen by your person, your right person, especially now when there's a ton of noise, and not to mention, y'all are looking a lot like each other, then how are you going to stand out from your competitors? Like, we have to have this conversation. We need to be doing some internal work. I also think from an industry perspective, I came from Wedding Wire and the Knot, and these companies, it's like the fall of these companies, right? The environment has completely changed. They haven't changed. There's a lot of drama I will not touch on right now, but like there's a lack of community and like good, solid community and support within our industry. And I will say, I mean, I'm a huge fan of Engage and love those ladies deeply. And I think we're craving that all the time. And I think WHIP is awesome. And there's lots of different groups, but I think there's like this desire for authentic, like no like let's hold the braggadociousness because that's just making people feel less than, and having authentic conversations, which is why I think we're having this conversation right now. Genuinely, people want realness. People want authenticity, just like Gen Z, guys. We're just like them. There's a missing piece there. And I think there's a big opportunity to close that gap. I think Frida is another awesome platform too, that's like trying to help bridge that gap too. But it's like, it's not something about all of these things are not enough, because I think that we've been operating fraudulently in a lot of ways. I'm not saying your business is fraudulent. Okay, let's be clear. But it's just like a lot of this is a facade. And a lot of us have been operating without profit or without process. Okay. We got to stop winging it. It's just not working for us. Okay. So now what? I think we need to start moving, like I said, differently. I have always said, especially when I'm talking to venues and to hotels and to tourism boards, that the ultimate influencer is those actually executing the weddings. The ultimate influencer. It is not the brides. They're doing this for the first time. What the fuck do they know? Honestly, like, okay. But we know how to produce, how to execute. So if we had more transparency on these things, we'd probably win a lot bigger and a lot better. And like, there are certain people in this space that I think are doing an excellent job doing exactly that, you know, and that will help pay off and differentiate you, not just among your colleagues, but also, and most importantly, to your clients, because they feel like they can trust you and we're not hiding things. I think we need to be thinking differently about how we're showing our expertise. And that's not just like talking about how we're folding napkins. It's about like being honest about what things cost. If you don't follow Nancy Narking, that's a great follow. I love Samantha Roberts. I'm not sure if that's still anonymous, but she's a very good friend. And I love what she's doing there, because we're dispelling and being honest about what things cost, period. And what people are thinking and saying. It's like, why are we having these private conversations? Like, what? Like, yes, I'm not saying to bash on couples. Like, don't do that. That's a bad look. But like, why can't we just be honest about, like, some people aren't going to have the budget to have a Sophia Grange wedding. Obviously, they're celebrities. I also really want to implore you to stop looking so much to your left and to your right. Please, dear Lord, like, yes, competition is important, but again, I cannot stress enough how many people are looking to the same couple of people in this industry, and then like not only knocking off their work, but knocking off how they're presenting. Like, if you're doing things differently, and most especially how you're showing up on social, like within the media socialites, we've completely changed our strategy with how we are producing content completely, because it's all blending together. It needs to be memorable. Like, this is the time that you need to be so unforgettable. How do you do that? You do that by showing your personality. You do that by thinking about things differently. You do that by looking for inspiration outside of your competition, because you're only going to either consciously or unconsciously be taking and ripping them off. So we've got to stop that. Okay. Most importantly, and lastly for today, we need to really be thinking about your brand. And people buy from people they like. I will say that till I'm blue in the face. But if you don't have a brand that you're investing in, and again, you're building your own proverbial building blocks for yourself, for your business, like how is anybody going to remember you? This is so important. Authenticity, woven within that is so important. They need to feel connected and trust you. And how are they going to do that? By showing up on the appropriate channels, doing things and approaching things differently. Thinking about things, having a plan and executing that plan. And it's all about how you make them feel. So this is the time to really go back to the drawing board, assess the situation, stop consuming as much as you are, and start looking inwards and up. By up, I mean out of this industry. And for now, I'm sure there will be a part 2 at some point. For now, I'll leave you with that. Thank you so much. Please rate, review, and subscribe, and I will see you next week.